Captain Marcus Cole was not looking for trouble when his old cargo ship picked up the distress signal. But trouble had a way of finding him no matter where he went in the galaxy. The signal came from deep inside the Valen Nebula, a place where no human had ever traveled before. And every instinct told him to ignore it and keep flying toward his delivery destination. But the signal was weak and desperate. And Marcus had never been good at walking away from someone who needed help. He turned his ship, the Drifter's Fortune, toward the source of the signal and flew into the purple clouds of the nebula. What he found made his blood run cold. A beautiful alien vessel floated in the darkness, but it was torn apart by weapons fire, and plasma burns covered its golden hull like terrible scars. Marcus brought his ship closer and scanned for life signs, expecting to find nothing but death inside. The wreckage's scanner beeped once, showing a single weak life sign somewhere in the middle of the destroyed ship. Wow, Marcus said to himself as he grabbed his old plasma pistol and a medical kit. This is probably a terrible idea. He docked with the alien ship and climbed through the broken hull into darkness. And the smell of smoke and something sweet like flowers filled his nose. Bodies lay everywhere he looked. Tall beings with silver skin and armor that looked like it was made from crystal. And every single one of them was dead. They had died fighting. Marcus could tell that much. And whatever had attacked them had shown no mercy at all. He followed his scanner deeper into the ship, stepping over debris and trying not to look too closely at the fallen aliens around him. Life sign led him to a room that might have been some kind of medical bay, or maybe a bedroom. And there he found Hirsch. She was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen in all his years traveling. The stars, her skin was silver like moonlight on water, and her hair was long and white like fresh snow falling from the sky. She wore robes of deep purple that were now stained with something that glowed like liquid starlight. And Marcus realized with a shock that it was her blood. Her eyes fluttered open as he knelt beside her, and they were violet like amethysts, beautiful and strange and filled with pain. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was racing. "I got your signal, and I am here to help." She spoke in a language he did not understand, her voice weak and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. His translator implant buzzed for a moment, and then her words became clear in his ears. "You are not Volanti," she whispered. "What manner of creature are you?" "Human," Marcus replied as he opened his medical kit and looked at her wounds. "I know I am not much to look at, but I am all you have got right now." The wound in her side was bad, very bad, and his medical supplies were designed for human bodies, not alien princesses from unknown species. But Marcus had learned a long time ago that when you have no good options, you make the bad options work somehow. He cleaned her wound with antiseptic and hoped it would not poison her. And when she did not scream or die, he took that as a good sign. He used the surgical glue from his kit to close the wound, and then he wrapped bandages around her torso as gently as he could manage. "This is not proper medical care," Marcus admitted as he worked, "but it should keep you alive until I can get you somewhere better." The alien woman watched him with those strange violet eyes, and there was something in her gaze that he could not quite understand. "Why do you help me?" she asked in that musical voice of hers. "You do not know me, and I am not of your kind." Marcus shrugged as he finished wrapping her bandages and sat back on his heels to look at her. "You needed help," he said simply, "and I was here, so that is all there is to it, really." She stared at him like he had said something impossible, something that made no sense in her understanding of the universe. Before she could respond, Marcus heard a sound that made his stomach drop with fear ship engines, and they were getting closer very fast. He ran to a broken window and looked out into the nebula, and his worst fears were confirmed when he saw two ships approaching the wreckage. They were ugly ships, covered in weapons and painted with marks that Marcus recognized from his years hauling cargo through dangerous space pirates. and they were coming back to finish what they had started. "We need to move," Marcus said, as he hurried back to the alien woman and helped her to her feet. "Can you walk at all?" She leaned on him heavily, her tall frame making him feel very small, but she managed to take a few steps with his support. "Who is coming?" she asked as they stumbled through the ship toward where Marcus had docked. "The people who did this to your ship," Marcus replied grimly. "And they do not look like the type who leave witnesses behind." They made it back to the Drifter's Fortune just as the pirate ships began to dock with the wreckage, and Marcus could hear the sounds of boots stomping through metal corridors. He helped the alien woman onto his ship and sealed the airlock behind them. Then he ran to the cockpit and began undocking procedures as fast as his hands could move. "Come on, come on, come on," he muttered as his old ship groaned and complained about being rushed. Drifter's Fortune finally pulled free from the wrecked alien vessel, and Marcus punched the engines to full power, but it was not fast enough. The pirates had seen him, and they were angry, and plasma bolts began streaking past his ship like deadly fireflies in the dark. One bolt hit his cargo bay, and alarms started screaming throughout the ship. "This day just keeps getting better." Marcus growled as he pulled hard on the controls and sent his ship diving toward an asteroid field nearby. The alien woman had made her way to the cockpit, holding onto walls for support, and she watched with wide eyes as Marcus flew like a madman through the deadly rocks. "You will kill us both," she cried as an asteroid nearly scraped the hull of the ship. "Maybe," Marcus admitted with a wild grin on his face. "But those pirates will definitely kill us. So I like my odds better this way." He flew through gaps that should have been too small, dodging rocks by inches and somehow keeping the old ship together through sheer willpower. The pirates tried to follow, but they were not crazy enough to match his flying, and one of their ships clipped an asteroid and exploded in a ball of fire. The other pirate ship pulled back, giving up the chase, and Marcus finally let himself breathe again as he flew out the other side of the asteroid field. "We made it," he said, laughing with relief. "I cannot believe that actually worked." The alien woman stared at him with an expression he could not read, something between fear and wonder and maybe a little bit of respect. "You are insane," she said slowly. "Yeah," Marcus replied with a tired smile. "I get that a lot, but hey, we are alive, so maybe insane is not so bad." He set a course away from the nebula and turned to look at his strange passenger properly for the first time. "So," he said, "I am Marcus Cole, captain of this fine piece of junk. And who exactly are you?" She straightened despite her wounds and lifted her chin with a dignity that seemed built into her very bones. "I am Princess Elithsara of the Volanthi Sovereignty," she announced, "heir to the throne of 200 star systems and daughter of Queen Salith Mora the Eternal." Marcus blinked at her for a long moment, his brain trying to process what she had just said. "A princess," he repeated flatly. "Of course you are a princess. Because why would this day be simple?" He rubbed his face with his hands and sighed deeply before looking at her again. "Okay, princess, let us get you home then. Just point me in the right direction and try not to bleed on my seats too much." And that was how Marcus Cole, a simple human cargo hauler, found himself carrying alien royalty through hostile space toward an empire he had never heard of. He had no idea that saving her life would change his own life forever, or that the grateful queen would never let him leave once he arrived, but for now, he just focused on flying his ship and keeping his unexpected passenger alive, because that was all he could really do. The stars stretched out before them, full of danger and mystery, and somewhere out there, a queen waited for news of her daughter. Marcus did not know it yet, but he was about to become the most valuable human in the entire galaxy, whether he wanted to be or not. The journey to Volanthi space would take 6 days according to the coordinates Princess Elithsara had given Marcus. And those 6 days would prove to be the strangest of his entire life on the first day. The princess slept most of the time while her body tried to heal from the terrible wounds she had suffered. Marcus checked on her every few hours, changing her bandages and making sure the strange glowing blood had stopped leaking from her side. He gave her his own bunk because it was the only proper bed on the ship, and he made himself a sleeping spot on top of some cargo crates in the hold. It was not comfortable, but Marcus had slept in worse places during his years traveling the stars alone. On the second day, Elithsara was awake and alert, and she began asking questions about everything she saw on the ship. "What is this vessel made from?" she asked as she ran her silver fingers along the metal walls of the cockpit. "Steel mostly," Marcus replied while he adjusted their course around a small nebula. "Some aluminum and whatever else they had lying around when they built her 50 years ago." The princess looked horrified by this answer, and Marcus could not help but laugh at her expression. "Your ships are not made of metal?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Our ships are grown from living crystal that sings with the energy of our home star," Elithsara explained. "They are beautiful and eternal, not like this crude thing of dead materials." Marcus patted the console of his ship with affection and shook his head at the princess. "Hey now, the drifter's fortune may not be pretty, but she has kept me alive through a lot of bad situations. So show some respect." Elithsara tilted her head in that alien way of hers, studying him like he was a puzzle she could not solve. "You speak of this machine as if it were alive," she observed. "As if you have feelings for it. Humans get attached to things," Marcus admitted with a shrug. "Ships, pets, plants, even rocks sometimes. We just cannot help it." "Fascinating," the princess murmured. And Marcus got the feeling she was making mental notes about human behavior on the third day. They shared a meal together for the first time, and it became clear that their species had very different ideas about food. Marcus heated up a can of beef stew, one of the few decent meals left in his supplies, and offered some to his passenger. Elithrazos sniffed the food and wrinkled her nose with obvious disgust at the smell. "What creature did this come from?" she asked suspiciously. "A cow," Marcus said. "It is an animal from Earth, my home planet, and do not worry. The cow was already dead when they put it in the can." The princess pushed the bowl away and instead ate some kind of dried fruit she had saved in her robes. And Marcus finished a whole pot of stew by himself later. He offered her some hot sauce to try, a small bottle he always kept with his supplies, because food got boring after weeks in space. "This makes food taste more interesting," he explained, putting a few drops on his finger and licking it off. Elithsara carefully put one tiny drop on her tongue, and her violet eyes went wide with shock as the heat hit her. "This is poison," she gasped, grabbing for water. "Why would you eat poison?" Marcus laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. And even after he explained that humans enjoyed the burning sensation, the princess continued to look at him like he had lost his mind. "Your species deliberately causes pain to itself for pleasure," she said slowly. "This is the strangest thing I have ever learned. Wait until I tell you about roller coasters." Marcus replied with a grin. On the fourth day, 2 pirate ships found them again, and everything went wrong very quickly. The alarms on the drifter's fortune screamed to life, just as Marcus was teaching Elithsara how to play cards, a human game that seemed to confuse and fascinate her equally. "They found us," Marcus said as he threw down his cards and ran to the cockpit. "I do not know how, but they found us." The princess followed him, moving much better now that her wounds were healing, and she watched the scanner with fear in her beautiful eyes. "Those are the same ships that attacked my vessel," she said quietly. "They killed everyone I was traveling with. All my guards and servants and friends." Marcus could hear the pain in her voice, and he reached out to squeeze her arm gently before turning back to the controls. "They will not get you," he promised. "Not while I am still breathing." the pirate ships were faster than the drifter's fortune, and there was nowhere to hide in the empty space around them. The Marcus saw something on his scanner that gave him a crazy idea. An asteroid field about 20 minutes away, that would be. Suicide to fly through at high speed. Hold on to something, he told the princess as he pushed the engines past their safe limits. The ship groaned and shook like it might fall apart. But it flew faster than it ever had before as Marcus aimed for the deadly field of rocks. Plasma bolts flew past them, some coming close enough to make the whole ring like a bell. But Marcus dodged and weaved with skills he had learned from years of dangerous work. "What are you doing?" Elithazara demanded as the asteroid field grew larger in the viewport. "Something stupid," Marcus admitted. "But it is the only chance we have got." He flew into the asteroid field at a speed that should have killed them instantly, and the princess screamed as rocks the size of buildings tumbled past them on every side. Marcus did not think about what he was doing. He just let his instincts take over and trusted his hands to find the path through the chaos left. Right, up, down, spin, dive, climb. The movements came faster than thought as he threaded his ship through impossible gaps behind them. One of the pirate ships tried to follow and failed, smashing into an asteroid and exploding in a flash of fire and debris. The second ship was smarter and pulled back to go around the field. But that would take time. Time that Marcus used to fly out the other side and disappear into the darkness of space. "We lost them," Marcus said when he was finally able to breathe again, his hands shaking on the controls from the stress of what he had just done. Elithazara stared at him with an expression of pure disbelief, her silver skin somehow even paler than before. "That was impossible," she whispered. "No living being could have flown through that field at such speed. The calculations alone would require a supercomputer." "I did not calculate anything," Marcus admitted. "I just flew and hoped for the best." "You hoped?" the princess repeated, sounding almost angry now. "You risked both our lives on hope." "Hope and practice," Marcus corrected with a tired smile. "I have been flying junk ships through bad situations my whole life, and eventually you get a feel for it." Elithazara sat down heavily in the co-pilot's seat and studied him with those violet eyes that seemed to see right through him. "The databases of my people say that humans are a minor species," she said slowly. "Fragile and short-lived and unremarkable in every way. But I am beginning to think those databases are very wrong." Marcus just shrugged and focused on setting a new course that would avoid any more pirates on the 5th and 6th days. The princess asked him many questions about humans and Earth, and why he had become a cargo hauler traveling alone through space. He told her about growing up on a colony world where life was hard and opportunities were few. He told her about learning to fly from his grandfather, who had been a pilot in some war Marcus barely remembered. He told her about losing his family to a sickness when he was young, and how flying became his way of escaping the sadness that followed. "You have lost so much," Elithazara said softly when he finished his story. "Yet you still stopped to help a stranger in need. Why?" Marcus thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "Because my grandfather taught me that the universe can be dark and cruel," he said finally. "But every time we help someone, we add a little light to that darkness. And maybe that is the whole point of being alive." The princess was quiet after that, looking at him with something new in her eyes. Something that might have been admiration, or maybe just confusion. "How long do humans live?" she asked suddenly. "About 80 years if we are lucky," Marcus replied. "Why do you ask?" Elithazara looked shocked by his answer, covering her mouth with her slender silver hand. "My people live for 800 years, she said. "Your entire life is like a single breath to us." Marcus laughed at the expression on her face and shook his head with amusement. "Then I guess I better make my 80 years count," he said. "No time to waste being afraid or selfish when the clock is always ticking." The princess nodded slowly. And Marcus could see that something in his words had affected her deeply. Perhaps that is why your people are the way you are, she mused. You burn so bright because you know your flame will not last forever. Marcus had never thought about it that way before. But he supposed she might be right. On the morning of the 7th day, a beautiful planet appeared on their scanners, covered in purple oceans and silver continents. Home, Alethsara breathed, pressing her hand against the viewport like she could touch the world below. We made it, Marcus said with a smile. I told you I would get you back safe. But as ships from the planet rose up to meet them and escort them down to the surface, Marcus had no idea what was waiting for him below. He thought he would drop off the princess, maybe get a thank you and some fuel for his ship, and then continue on with his simple life. He could not have been more wrong about what came next. The escort ships guided the drifter's fortune down through clouds that sparkled with strange light. And Marcus found himself holding his breath as the Volanthi homeworld revealed itself. Beneath them, everything was beautiful beyond anything he had ever imagined. With cities made of crystal that caught the sunlight and scattered rainbows across the purple landscape, rivers of silver water wound between towers that reached toward the sky like frozen music. And everywhere he looked, there were gardens filled with flowers that glowed in soft colors. This is incredible, Marcus whispered as he flew over a city that made every human settlement look like a pile of rocks by comparison. Alethra smiled at his reaction, and there was pride in her voice when she spoke about her home. The Volanthi have had 10,000 years to perfect our world, she explained. Every crystal is grown with care, and every garden is tended by artists who dedicate their lives to beauty. Their ship was directed to land on a platform of pure white stone outside the largest structure Marcus had ever seen. The palace of the Volanthi Queen rose before them like a mountain made of light, its spires reaching so high that their tops disappeared into the clouds above. Hundreds of Volanthi waited on the platform, all of them tall and silver and beautiful, and they cheered when Alethsara stepped out of the old cargo ship. Marcus hung back in the doorway of his ship, feeling very small and very plain compared to everything around him. Come, Alethsara said, turning back to take his hand in hers. You must meet my mother and receive thanks for what you have done. I do not think I belong here, Marcus replied, looking down at his worn clothes and dirty boots. Maybe I should just stay with my ship. But the princess would not hear of it, and she pulled him forward into the crowd of cheering aliens who parted to let them through. Guards in crystal armor surrounded them as they walked toward the palace, and Marcus noticed that many of the Volanthi were staring at him with curious expressions. He heard whispers in their musical language, words his translator caught in pieces. What is that creature? So small and soft? How can it even survive? Is that really what saved the princess? Marcus tried to ignore the whispers and focused on keeping up with Alethsara as she led him through doors of carved gemstone into the palace. Inside was even more amazing than the outside. With halls so large that entire human buildings could fit inside them, light came from everywhere and nowhere, making the crystal walls glow with soft colors that shifted as they walked. Finally, they reached a throne room that made Marcus stop in his tracks and stare with his mouth hanging open. The room was vast beyond reason, with a ceiling so high it looked like a sky of its own, and the floor was made of stone that showed the stars beneath its surface. At the far end of the room sat a throne of black crystal, and on that throne sat the most powerful being Marcus had ever encountered. Queen Selithmora was ancient. That much was clear from the weight of authority in her presence. But she was also terrifyingly beautiful. Her silver skin was darker than her daughter's, like tarnished metal, and her eyes were the deep purple of a dying sun. She wore robes that seemed to be made of living shadows, and a crown of crystal thorns rested on her head of white hair. The queen did not move as they approached, but her eyes tracked Marcus with the cold focus of a predator watching. Alethsara knelt before her mother, And Marcus quickly did the same, his knees hitting the strange star-filled floor. "My daughter returns to me," the Queen said, a voice filling the massive room without effort. "I had feared you were lost forever. I nearly was." "Mother," Elithsara replied, her head still bowed. "The pirates attacked without warning and killed everyone aboard my ship. But this human found me and saved my life." The Queen's attention shifted fully to Marcus, and he felt like an insect being examined by a scientist. "Rise, human," she commanded. "Let me see the creature that has accomplished what my own guards could not." Marcus stood on shaky legs and forced himself to meet the Queen's gaze, even though every instinct told him to look. Awake Queen Silithmora studied him for a long moment, her ancient eyes taking in every detail of his appearance. "You are smaller than I expected," she said finally, "and softer. Your species has no claws or armor or any visible weapons. How did you defeat the pirates who destroyed an armed Volanthi vessel?" "I did not really defeat them, Your Majesty," Marcus admitted. "I just got lucky and flew faster than they could follow." "He is being modest," Elithsara interrupted, standing up to defend him. "He fought pirates in the wreckage of my ship to protect me, and he flew through an asteroid field at impossible speed to escape our pursuers. Luck alone cannot explain what he did." The Queen raised one elegant eyebrow and looked at Marcus with new interest. "Is this true, human?" she asked. "Did you risk your life multiple times to save a stranger from another species?" "She needed help," Marcus said with a shrug. "I was there. And that is all there is to it, really." A murmur ran through the court of Volanthi nobles who had gathered to watch this meeting. And even the Queen seemed surprised by his simple answer. "Fascinating," Queen Silithmora said, leaning forward on her throne. "Tell me, human, what reward do you expect for returning my daughter to me?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably under the weight of all those alien eyes watching him. "I do not need a reward, Your Majesty," he said honestly. "If you could just point me toward human space and maybe give me some fuel for my ship, I will be on my way." The silence that followed his words was deafening, and Marcus could tell he had said something wrong. The Queen's eyes narrowed, and she exchanged a look with her daughter that Marcus could not interpret. "You misunderstand your situation, human," Queen Silithmora said slowly, her voice taking on a hard edge. "You have saved the life of my only heir, my only child, the future of the Volanthi sovereignty." "Yes, and I am glad she is safe," Marcus replied, confusion clear in his voice. "But I do not see why that means I cannot go home." The Queen rose from her throne, and even though she was far across the room, Marcus felt like she was standing right in front of him. "By the ancient covenant of Velith, a debt of life cannot be repaid with credits or goods," she announced, her voice echoing off the crystal walls. "When someone saves a life of the royal blood, they become bound to that life forever." Marcus felt his stomach drop as the meaning of her words began to sink in. "What exactly does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It means you will not be leaving," the Queen declared. "You are now a protected asset of the Volanthi sovereignty, and you will remain here where you can be kept safe and honored as you deserve." "Mother, perhaps we should discuss this," Elithsara began. But the Queen silenced her with a look. "There is nothing to discuss," Queen Silithmora said firmly. "The covenant is clear, and I will not dishonor our traditions by ignoring it." Marcus could not believe what he was hearing, and he stepped forward despite the guards who moved to stop him. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I am not some object to be kept," he said, his voice rising with anger. "I am a free man, and I have a life to get back to." The Queen looked at him with something that might have been amusement or maybe pity. "What life?" she asked. "My scholars have already researched your background, Marcus Cole, and you have no family, no home, no wealth, and a lifespan of mere decades. What exactly are you returning to?" The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut, and he struggled to find an answer. "That is not the point," he said finally. "Freedom is not about what you have. It is about the right to choose your own path." Queen Silithmora waved her hand dismissively and sat back down on her throne. "Your concept of freedom is primitive and sad," she said. "There you will have everything you could ever want. Luxury beyond imagination, protection from all harm, and the respect of an entire civilization. Why would you reject such gifts?" "Because I did not ask for them," Marcus replied stubbornly. "And because a cage made of gold is still a cage." The court gasped at his boldness, and even Elethsora looked shocked by his defiance of the queen. But Queen Silithmora only smiled, a cold expression that did not reach her eyes. "You are more interesting than I expected." "Human," she admitted. "Perhaps there is wisdom in studying your species more closely. Take him to the honored guest quarters and see that he has everything he needs." Guards surrounded Marcus before he could protest, and he found himself being marched out of the throne room despite his attempts to resist. "This is not right," he shouted back at the queen. "You cannot just keep me here against my will." But the doors of the throne room closed behind him, and his protests echoed uselessly off the crystal walls as he was led deeper into the palace in the throne room. Elithsora turned to her mother with distress written on her silver face. "Mother, this is wrong," she said. "He saved my life, and this is how we repay him, by making him a prisoner." "He is not a prisoner," the queen replied calmly. "He is a protected asset, and he will learn to appreciate the difference in time. Besides, have you ever encountered a species like this before?" Elithsora had to admit that she had not. That humans were unlike anything she had ever experienced. "He is remarkable," she said quietly. "But that does not give us the right to keep him here against his will." Queen Silithmora looked at her daughter with ancient wisdom in her eyes. "You are young, my child, and you do not understand the value of what we have found," she said. The quarters they gave Marcus were nicer than anything he had ever seen in his entire life. With rooms so large, he could have parked his cargo ship inside them. The bed was soft as a cloud and adjusted to his body perfectly, and the walls could display any view he wanted, from mountains to oceans to Starfield servants appeared whenever he needed anything, bringing food and drink and clothes made from fabrics that felt like water against his skin. It was paradise. And Marcus hated every single moment of it on the first day of his captivity. He tried to leave his quarters and found guards waiting outside every door. They were polite and respectful, but they made it clear that he was not allowed to wander the palace without an escort. "For your own protection," they explained in their musical voices. "The palace is large, and you could easily become lost." Marcus knew that was nonsense, but there was nothing he could do against guards who were twice his size and carried weapons he did not understand. On the second day, scholars began to arrive at his quarters with endless questions about human biology and culture and history. They wanted to know how his body healed so quickly from wounds that would take a Volante months to recover. They wanted to know why humans formed emotional bonds so fast and so strongly with other beings. They wanted to know what made his species fight against impossible odds instead of accepting defeat. Marcus answered their questions at first, hoping that cooperation might earn him some freedom. But as the days passed, he realized that the scholars saw him as a specimen rather than a person. "Your cardiovascular system is remarkable," one scholar said while scanning his chest with a strange device. "So much redundancy built into such a small organ. It is like your entire species was designed to survive damage. We evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us." Marcus replied flatly, "You learn to be tough or you die young." The scholars exchanged excited looks and made notes on their glowing tablets, and Marcus felt more like an animal in a zoo with every passing hour. On the fifth day, Queen Silithmora herself came to visit him in his luxurious prison. She swept into his quarters like a storm of shadows and light, and even the servants and guards fell back in her presence. "I am told you have been uncooperative," she said, stunning him with those ancient purple eyes. "The scholars say you refuse to participate in their studies." "I am not a lab animal," Marcus replied, crossing his arms and meeting her gaze without fear. "I answered their questions about human culture, but I will not let them poke and prod me like I am a piece of meat." The queen tilted her head in that alien way that reminded him of her daughter. "You continue to resist," she observed, "even though you have been given everything you could want. Why?" "Because none of this is what I want," Marcus exploded, his frustration finally boiling over. "I want to fly my ship through the stars. I want to make my own choices about where I go and what I do. I want to live my short human life on my own terms." Queen Selithmora watched his outburst with calm interest, like she was observing a natural phenomenon rather than a man in pain. "Tell me," she said when he had finished, "what exactly is waiting for you out there that is so important?" "Nothing," Marcus admitted, his shoulders slumping. "I have no family, no friends, no home except my ship, but that is not the point." "Then what is the point?" the queen asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Marcus struggled to find the words to explain something that seemed so obvious to him. "The point is that I chose that life," he said finally. "It may be empty and lonely and meaningless to you, but it was mine. I earned every credit in my pocket and every scratch on my ship, and no one had the right to take that away from me." The queen considered his words for a long moment before responding. "Your species places great value on this concept of choice," she said slowly, "even when the choices available to you are all painful or difficult. You still prefer to make them yourselves." "Of course we do," Marcus replied. "That is what it means to be alive. To face the universe and decide who you want to be, good or bad, success or failure. At least it is your own story, Queen." Selithmora nodded, as if he had confirmed something she had suspected. "The Volanti live for many centuries," she said, "and in that time we have learned that most choices lead to pain. So we have built a society that eliminates as many choices as possible. Everyone knows their place and their purpose from birth. And this brings peace." "That sounds like a nightmare," Marcus said honestly. "No wonder your people seem so cold and distant. They have forgotten what it means to really live." The queen's eyes flashed with something dangerous, and Marcus wondered if he had pushed too far, but instead of anger, she surprised him with what might have been a sad smile. "Perhaps you are right," she admitted. "Perhaps we have lost something important in our pursuit of order and safety. But that is exactly why I cannot let you leave." "I do not understand," Marcus said, confusion replacing his anger. "Your species burns with a fire we lost long ago," the queen explained. "You live fast and love hard, and fight against death with every breath. And I want my people to learn from you. I want my daughter to understand what it means to truly be alive." Marcus stared at her as the true reason for his captivity finally became clear. "You do not just want to study me," he realized. "You want me to change your people. I want you to remind us what we have forgotten," the queen corrected. "And that is a task that cannot be accomplished in a single visit." She turned to leave, but Marcus called out to stop her. "And what about what I want?" he demanded. "What about my life and my choices?" The queen looked back at him with something that might have been regret. "Sacrifice is often required for the greater good," she said. "Surely a species that throws itself into danger for strangers can understand that." Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone with his beautiful prison and his bitter thoughts. That night, Elefsara came to visit him for the first time since his imprisonment began. She slipped into his quarters quietly, dismissing the servants with a wave of her hand, and sat down across from him with guilt written clearly on her silver face. "I am sorry," she said softly. "I did not know my mother would do this." and I have tried to change her mind. But she will not listen. Marcus had been angry at the princess for days, blaming her for bringing him into this mess. But seeing her distress now made it hard to hold on to that anger. "It is not your fault," he said finally. "You did not ask to be attacked by pirates, and you did not ask me to rescue you, but you did rescue me," Elisara replied. "And now you are paying the price for my life? That is not fair." "Life is not fair," Marcus said with a tired shrug. "Humans learn that lesson pretty early. But we keep going anyway." The princess studied him with those violet eyes that reminded him of the nebula where they had first met. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep fighting when everything seems hopeless?" Marcus thought about her question seriously before answering. "Because giving up is worse than losing," he said. "As long as you are still fighting, there is a chance that things might get better. But once you give up, that chance disappears forever." Elisara nodded slowly, and Marcus could see her thinking about his words. "My people do not think this way," she admitted. "When we face a situation we cannot win, we accept it and adapt. We do not waste energy on hopeless struggles. And look where that has gotten you," Marcus replied. "A beautiful civilization full of beings who have forgotten how to feel alive." The princess flinched at his words, but she did not deny them. "You are right," she whispered. "I have lived for 200 years, and I have never felt as alive as I did during those 6 days on your ship. Running from pirates and flying through asteroids, I was terrified. But I was also truly living for the first time." Marcus felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest at her words. "Then help me," he said, leaning forward urgently. "Help me escape from here, and I will show you what it means to really live." Elisara looked conflicted, her silver hands twisting together in her lap. "I cannot betray my mother," she said. "And if I help you escape, it would bring shame upon my family. Is following traditions that trap innocent people really more important than doing what is right?" Marcus challenged the princess, had no answer for that. And she left his quarters with troubled thoughts clearly weighing on her mind, but Marcus had seen something in her eyes that gave him hope. A tiny crack in the wall of duty and tradition that surrounded her, and humans were very good at finding cracks and making them wider. He would not give up. He would not adapt and accept his fate like the Volanthi wanted him to. He would keep fighting until he was free, or until his short human life came to its end, because that was what it meant to be human. To rage against the dying of the light even when the darkness seemed endless, and somewhere deep inside, Elisara was beginning to understand why that fire was so precious. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus became a prisoner in paradise, and every day felt longer than the one before. I had stopped answering questions from the scholars and refused to eat the fancy food the servants brought him. The guards watched him with worried eyes as he paced his quarters like a caged animal. And even the queen seemed concerned by his declining condition. "He is dying," one of the scholars reported to Queen Selithmora. "Not from any illness we can detect, but from something inside his spirit. It is like his will to live is fading away." The queen frowned at this news and went to see the human for herself. She found Marcus sitting by a window that looked out over the crystal city. But his eyes were empty and distant, like he was seeing something very far away. "You are killing yourself," she said as she sat down across from him. "Your body is healthy, but your spirit is broken. Is your freedom really worth dying for?" Marcus turned to look at her, and there was no anger left in his eyes, only a deep sadness that made the ancient queen feel strange things in her chest. "You really do not understand, do you?" he said quietly. "For humans, freedom is not separate from life. It is part of life. Taking away one is the same as taking away the other." The queen had ruled for 500 years and had seen countless beings come and go. But she had never encountered anything quite like this stubborn, fragile, Magnificent creature. I thought I was honoring you, she admitted. In our culture, protection is the greatest gift one can offer. I did not realize it would cause you such pain. Your daughter tried to tell you, Marcus replied, but you would not listen. Just like you would not listen to me when I tried to explain why I needed to leave. Queen Silithmora was not used to being criticized. But something about this human made her want to understand rather than punish. Perhaps I was wrong, she said slowly, the words unfamiliar in her mouth. Perhaps there are things about the universe that even an ancient queen does not understand. Marcus looked at her with surprise, not expecting this admission from someone so powerful and proud, before either of them could say more. The door to his quarters opened, and Alethsara walked in with a determined expression on her face. Mother, I need to speak with you, she said, her voice steady despite the fear Marcus could see in her eyes. I am invoking the right of equivalence. The queen went very still, and Marcus could feel the tension in the room rise like a physical force. That is a serious matter, Queen Silithmora said carefully. Are you certain you understand what you are doing? I understand perfectly, Alethsara replied. This human saved my life, and by our own laws, I have the right to repay that debt in equal measure. It gave me my freedom when the pirates would have taken it. And now I will give him his. Marcus watched this exchange with confusion, not understanding the significance of what was happening. Explain this to me, he said, looking between mother and daughter. What is the right of equivalence? It was the queen who answered, her voice heavy with something that might have been respect. When someone saves a life of royal blood, they become bound to that life by our covenant, she explained. But the one who is saved also has the right to repay that debt by giving something of equal value. The princess is offering to trade her own protection of you for your freedom. What does that mean for her? Marcus asked, worried now about what Alethsara was sacrificing. It means I accept full responsibility for whatever happens to you after you leave, the princess said. If you come to harm because you chose freedom over safety, that shame falls on me and my honor. I cannot let you do that, Marcus said, standing up quickly. You should not have to pay for my choices. Alethsara smiled at him, and there was something new in her expression, something that looked almost human. You taught me that freedom is worth any price, she said. You taught me that a life without choice is not really living at all. This is my choice, and I am making it gladly. The queen watched her daughter with ancient eyes that saw more than she revealed. You have changed, she observed. These weeks with the human have transformed you in ways I did not expect. He showed me what it means to burn brightly. Alethsara replied, even if that light only lasts for a moment. It is better than an eternity of darkness. A long silence filled the room as the queen considered her options finally. She rose from her seat and looked at Marcus with an expression he could not read. Very well, she said. The right of equivalence is invoked, and I will honor our traditions. You are free to leave. Human Marcus felt his heart leap with joy, but he kept his composure as he nodded his thanks to the queen. There is one condition, Queen Silithmora added. You must promise to return someday and teach us more about what it means to be human. Not as a prisoner, but as a guest. I can do that, Marcus agreed. If you promise to actually listen this time. The ghost of a smile crossed the queen's face before she swept out of the room, leaving Marcus alone with the princess who had saved his life. I do not know how to thank you, Marcus said, turning to Alethsara with emotion thick in his voice. You risked everything for me. You needed help, she replied, echoing the words he had said to her so many weeks ago, and I was there. That is all there is to it. Marcus laughed at hearing his own logic turn back on him, and before he could stop himself, he pulled the alien princess into a hug. She stiffened at first, unfamiliar with this human custom. But then she relaxed into his embrace and returned it. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. That night, Elithsara led him through secret passages that only the royal family knew about. Winding down through the heart of the palace to a hidden hangar below his ship was there, the Drifter's Fortune, looking battered and old and absolutely beautiful in the soft light. "I had the engineers repair the damage from your escape," the princess explained, "and they added some upgrades that should help keep you safe in your travels." Marcus ran his hand along the hull of his ship, feeling like he was greeting an old friend after a long separation. "Come with me," he said suddenly, turning to face Elithsara. "You said you felt alive during those 6 days we spent together. Come with me and feel that way forever." The princess looked tempted, more tempted than she had ever been by anything in her 200 years of life. "I cannot," she said finally, a voice full of regret. "My people need me here. And after what I have learned from you, I think I can help them find their fire again." Marcus nodded, understanding, even though it hurt to accept. "You will make a great queen someday," he said. "And if you ever need a crazy human to fly through asteroid fields for you, you know where to find me." Elithsara laughed, that musical sound he had grown so fond of during their time together. "Farewell, Marcus Cole," she said. "May your short life burn brighter than any star." "Farewell, princess," he replied. "May your long life be filled with choices worth making." He climbed into his ship and powered up the engines, feeling the familiar hum of the Drifter's Fortune coming to life around him as he flew up through the atmosphere into the darkness of space. He looked back at the beautiful purple planet one last time. Somewhere down there, a princess was watching him go, and he knew that neither of them would ever be the same after this adventure. 3 months later, Marcus received a transmission while hauling cargo through the Outer Rim territories. It was from the Volanthi Sovereignty, a formal update to their galactic databases that had been shared with all known species. The entry for humanity had been completely rewritten, and Marcus smiled as he read the new classification. Species: human. Classification: adaptive Deathworld survivors. Status: previously underestimated. Threat level: significantly revised. Cultural notes: humans possess an unusual drive toward freedom and self-determination that appears to be essential to their well-being. They form strong emotional bonds quickly and will risk their lives for strangers without hesitation. Their short lifespans seem to fuel rather than limit their achievements. And at the bottom, in smaller text that seemed to be a personal addition rather than official documentation, there was a final note: recommendation. Befriend if possible, they are worth the trouble. They will teach you things about living that you have forgotten. And they give surprisingly good hugs. Signed, Crown Princess Elithsara. Marcus laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. And he saved that transmission in a special folder he created just for messages from alien princesses. His life went back to normal after that, hauling cargo and flying through the stars on his own terms. But sometimes, when the universe felt dark and empty and his short human life seemed too small to matter, he would read that message again and remember that somewhere out there, an entire civilization had changed because one stubborn human refused to give up his freedom, and that was worth more than any treasure in the galaxy. The stars stretched out before him, full of adventure and danger and choices waiting to be made. And Marcus Cole flew toward them with a smile on his face and fire in his heart, because that was what it meant to be human, and he would not have it any other way.